I'm Aarti and I'm from Conserve Consultants. We are green building facilitators. Um, in front of, today it's a very good gathering because we have both architects and the builders in front of me. So I would like to raise this particular question whether does it make sense to validate the sustainability quotient in your project? For example, before launching a particular project, can you actually validate how good the design is in terms of sustainability? How much of energy you can save? How much of daylighting can come in? And does it make sense for builders to start adapting these practices as a mandatory requirement? To find out what kind of, and use it as a marketing strategy also, to show it in the brochure that the occupants, the end users may never have to use AC again in their apartments. So, does it make sense?
Okay, I'll answer. Okay, I lost. Can you certify or evaluate a building before it's built?
Yes.
Um,
We do that. I'm saying, should it not become more emphasized amongst builders to do that at a more when you go for green home certification. For a simple example, the project gets approved and it comes back to us, and we see that if we can change the elevation, if we can change the window size, we can get more daylight and all. But once it is approved, we are not able to do that. So if they do this exercise before the project is sort of launched and before it is sent for approval, if we do the exercise before and do the simulation on the project itself to understand what is the level of sustainable passive architecture techniques that has been we can incorporate. Does it make sense to do that at that time? Actually, this question is open to all, even to the builders who launch projects here.
Answered most of your questions yourself, but see, principally, it's a process. It's a process in which the intent is stated, and the intent is justified, and you have means to verify the intent. The way the means that you achieve, you adapt to achieve the intent is verifiable, and it's also commissioned at the end of it, so that you also test it and you actually observe it in actual reality. Yes, there you stop and certify and declare a building fit enough for a purpose. But what happens beyond that? You get a certificate and it's not maintained properly. These are big questions that are engaging everybody, and there is even movement that some of the safety issues. You revisit the whole thing subsequently on a periodical basis, and then you revalidate whether it's being operated, whether it's being maintained, or whether it's being used in a way it was intended to. Because usage of buildings in a different fashion can also change the efficiency patterns. Therefore, there's a method now. It's not that this method is final. The method will be worked upon, but I think it's reasonably foolproof in a major way.
Can I just answer that question? Please. I think this is precisely what the reciprocity index is trying to achieve. And where first you assure yourself that all points are included, and then you give the proper weightage to each, and you address each stakeholder's concern, and then you kind of evaluate it, have it as a checklist, and it is also a self-evaluation tool which will help you to become better and better. So even if you don't do it in the first instance, at the first in phase 1, in phase 2 you can upgrade your responses, your reciprocity. So that way you do achieve holistic sustainability. This is what we are trying to do, and this is getting launched at the Rio Summit, the Earth Summit, and when validated by the World Bank, I think should percolate to all city design.
Okay. Actually, we as a
Thank
company,
you. I just wanted to add a point from the developer's perspective, if I may. May I?
Do I have a choice?
I represent the Mahindras. I'm Sangeeta Prasad. And good question. I know we have the eminent people sitting on stage. We as practitioners have tried to inculcate the spirit of sustainability from the very beginning. And I have my good friend Sheila there on stage. The projects which we do, what we do is at the concept stage itself, we realize that sustainability has to be built in the pre-design stage, from the market brief, from the product brief. Because it has two advantages, that my design team and my project team get involved. Second, I can also control my costs, because when you do things as an afterthought, your cost of doing an afterthought is much higher than the cost of incorporating it at the beginning. And I'm sure that this community here will realize the importance of it, and we'll all be doing greener and sustainable buildings. I give my commitment to you, young lady. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and I'll request you to please give a big round of applause to the three eminent speakers. Thank you.
Know who they are. There's a little write-up there, so we will leave that aside. From this morning, we've looked at growth, we've looked at possibilities, we looked at financial issues, smart cities, etc. But all this is done by people. And if you don't have the right people and people with the right skills, we don't get anywhere with all this. So this is something that we need to see, how we would progress over the years in terms of investment in good people and the kind of training that we would give them. We heard this morning about corporatization of industry, about how it's a good area for investment. But one of the things that I've seen in this industry, there's a whole lot of civil engineers out here. I'm the only mechanical engineer standing here talking to a whole lot of civil engineers. The only issue that I've seen in this industry, it has got a lot of money, but it has the poorest of skills. Whereas we mechanical engineers talk of microns, they talk of centimeters. And at some point of time, I think this has to change. I have built a couple of buildings for our own this thing. I was very responsible, and I would find things going that way. Or they build a column which is doing that, and then they would put a lot of cement on it and make it straight. I said, this is not what skill is all about. And I think as days go by, at least in my view, looking at a crystal ball in the next 10, 15 years, which is what I expect some of the speakers also to speak about, I think the centimeters will become millimeters and microns too, where buildings would be prefabricated in a factory and fitted up on site. This is what we should be looking at. The other issue that worries me a little, and that some of the other speakers spoke about, is the greed. Everybody is in this business wants to make a lot of money, except for the guys who are working on the site. There's a serious issue there in terms of, you had a recent article where even very large companies refuse to sort of comply, even basic issues like ESI, there's no security, there's migrant labor, and this labor, anybody who's walking by the roadside at one time got pulled in as a mason. So what is the kind of effort that we are putting in skilling these people? How much of skills do they have? And if you see, some of the larger companies have their own skill training centers because they are not able to get enough people, and they are getting people from all over the state, all over the rest of the state. And I also understand across, there was some Indonesian labor at one point of time. I understand now there are some Chinese labor for very specific jobs that have come from China. Here we are a nation of 1.1 billion people. There's enough unemployment. There are enough, we are perhaps the youngest nation in the world. As all the other nations are growing older, we are growing younger in average age. And yet we have this issue, which means we need to really look at how we are going to skill our people. We are at the cutting edge of greatness. And I've told many times before, if you sit too long on a cutting edge, you know how painful it can be. So we need to look at what we would do to ensure that our young are trained enough and we have a good supply of manpower, considering the fact that we would have perhaps the youngest working age and the largest working age population over the next 10 years. We are in a good shape if we can skill them to be the second factory to the world, and not necessarily China being the factory, and perhaps even move some people across. So we are looking at a few issues here. What kind of skills are there today? And I would let each speaker speak for a few minutes, less than 5 minutes, so that we can then go into a question and answer kind of session. What kind of skills exist? What are the gaps that they see from each of their industries? What would be required in future? What do they see in the next 10, 15 years? How do things change? Not only just in terms of civil work, in terms of the work they do, the rest of the mechanical, plumbing, electrical. If you see the kind of quality, even amongst those who we call skilled, especially I look at being a mechanic there, sometimes you look at the plumbing and the electrical work. If a conduit starts there, it has to go straight. It will go that way, and come this way because it's convenient. And skills doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to do the work. You also have to have a mindset, and that was spoken of by the speakers. You have to have a mindset of quality to ensure that I will not accept anything lesser than this. And mind you, we are a nation of jugaad, or if you come to Chennai, adjust pannidlam. This business of adjusting everything is really sort of killing us. So we should not accept mediocrity in any work that we do. And how do we create a passion in people who are doing their work, irrespective of what work they're doing? First of all, I need to just blame ourselves for creating a situation in India where we have given premium to people working with their brains, sitting on a chair, looking at dumb screens, compared to people who are working with their hands. How can we change that mindset over the next few years? You can see that in Germany. It's a completely different ballgame. In most Western countries, it's a completely different ballgame. So this is something that we need to look at. What will mechanization do over the next few years? What about maintenance skills? Fancy buildings that we build, and they get dilapidated over a period of time. Do we have people who can maintain it and make it look as new as it ever was? And that we come to facility management, housekeeping, etc., etc. So I would then straight away get on and request speaker to come on, and Mr. Reddy, you want to take it first, just in case we get delayed, so you have a flight. Anybody else with an early flight? Okay, I will go with Mr. Reddy, and then I'll come to you.
Everybody, on behalf of the CREDAI National, I'm the director on the National Skill Development Corporation, and our one of the head, Mr. Jaykant from NSDC also here. I think he will let you know more about NSDC. So we are breaking our heads in NSDC. We identified about 20 sectors. The respective industries are, some of them already formulated sector skill councils. These sector skill councils, their duty is, suppose our construction sector skill council is under process. Working group is acting on that. See, this SSC, the sector skill council, will identify what are the trades and the standards, the requirement, the accreditation process. So that is a big task. Whoever is coming to NSDC for funding for the training, so they have to follow these standards set by the SSC of the concerned industry. So that is what is progress in our sector. So as per the NSDC estimates, about by 2020, for the only construction industry side, we need about 8 crores qualified workers. As in today, we have only 3.7 crores. So there is a shortfall. Then overall, our mandate, NSDC mandate, is to train about 15 crores people. But it's a big task now among ourselves. There is a huge gap already. And if you can see, read the McKinsey report on urbanization, it is projecting very big numbers, huge infrastructure requirement, housing requirement. To meet that, I think this type of the attitude of maybe the developers or contractors or the government agencies will not, I think, will meet that standards. Because basically, any mason, whether he would like to train his son as a mason, he says no. Absolutely no. My son should go to some soft skills. So that is the tendency. Then who will come into this field? This is a very hard field. So unless where we elevate them, we respect them, we give some dignity, or we extend all the facilities which a worker in organized sector in a factory is entitled for all type of benefits. But whereas in the construction industry, workers are not getting those benefits. Then why should they come into this field? So unless the government realizes that all the benefits should go to each and every construction worker in our unorganized sector, the moment he joins in the construction field, from next month onwards he should go, and the training has to be given to such people at free of cost by the government or the industry. Industry also by way of labor cess we are giving 1% to the departments. Huge accumulated money is with the state labor departments, about 12 to 15,000 crores are just lying unutilized. So one thing is training. Also, depending on the required skills, we have to identify the level of skilling. We have to identify the skills, and also depending on the productivity, skill level certification. Similarly, we have to reciprocate them the wages also. So unless we do this, nobody will come into this industry in future, because new generation, their ambition is different. Unless we attract, we give more incentives or more glamour to this, these people are more, maybe we have to redefine their designations also. So I was told in other countries, the trade workers, they draw per hour wages much higher than a software guy. So unless that comes into picture, otherwise nobody will come into this. So in fact, because of this demand, in future will be the large scale townships. At the same time, the quality, timely completion, and a lot of consumer awareness is coming up, and the government is coming up with the regulatory authority. So keeping on this in view, we need a big force, the big numbers, quality people, and maybe the entire scene may change also in future. If you can just look it in your cell phones, in YouTube, there's a building, I think China, ARK hotels, just see that, ARK hotels, 15-story buildings, they are built in 48 hours. So it's almost continuation supply of the components from the factory on hourly basis, seconds, minutes basis. The trucks will go on coming. So that type of mechanization, factory made components, maybe future is that type of the buildings. I think the type of technology will change. So I think accordingly we have to bring our workforce also to that level, because components may be manufactured in the factory, but if you go wrong at the installation point, this 48 hours will become 48 days. So
we'll pick up some of the other things, Mr. Reddy, once we have go through.
Yeah.
We'll probably visit back.
Yeah. So these are the main issues I would like to say. Other things Jaykant will cover. So partly some states have done some work. Andhra Pradesh National Academy of Construction has done a good job in this. We have 150 centers. We are training about 45 people in every year. So this is one state is doing, and many more states are coming into this. But unless otherwise, as I said in the morning, first of all, certain percent of the workforce should mandatorily in every developer's project or government contract. So we should make the percentage mandatory. The trained people should be employed. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll visit some of you. Yeah. I just request you to keep it
Thank you, sir.
short. This thing. Yeah, go ahead.
It will be too short.
Yeah,
I
and
think
he's the head of MIS and monitoring the National Skill Development.
yes, my director on board has already talked about NSDC. I thought which hat he would be wearing when he comes to talk. So I was expecting him to talk more from CREDAI's hat, more from employer's hat. But I think he did it right. He had some message to convey, and which he has. I mean, some of the problems we as a solution provider to the problem of having a right skill of people in the space. what we are facing, the way you are facing the problem of having skilled people, we are facing the problem of placing the skilled people. We are facing the problem of employers coming out to take their skilled people. So there are, problems are both sides, and I'm really thankful to Mr. Reddy that he has rightfully used the time and dais to convey the message. I wanted this to be more interactive. First of all, do we all agree that there is a skill shortage problem? We have been talking at every forum, everywhere. Is there a skill shortage problem? If yes, yeah, so we are here to provide a solution to the skill shortage problem. We as a Government of India agency, as an implementing agency to the Government of India, we provide funding to organizations to start a self-sustainable training centers. Any of you sitting here can become our partner, and we are ready to fund you all if you come up with a 10-year proposal that how are you going to have a profit-making business model. So that's the first thing we look forward to, and we provide you fund. We will have you to use the money for 3 years. We will not ask you what you are doing, but within the 3 years, you have to make it self-sustainable. So that's one thing we extend this support, and this is how we feel that the sector, we can do a turnaround. We can't start training because there is a huge requirement. We heard that you have got around 4 crore of people working in the industry. We need to have each of us, each of the employer who are employing, they should come forward in every region. They should come forward to support the Sector Skill Council, which we are in the process of forming for the sector. So let's have a list of all the training centers available in India. Let's have the list of all the courses available in India. Mr. Suresh has been kind enough to share the content, around 25, sir? 65 contents he has already shared. Mr. Satish is here. L&T is working very closely on forming the Sector Skill Council. Sachin here again is working very hard and bringing the people from the industry to take a lead. So I think all of us, I would still look forward, all of you, to be part of the Sector Skill Council and contribute in the best way what you can. And we will definitely take your feedback, if any, how to improve. And I would like every region should have a training center. Every region, every people who are willing to set up a training center, who really feels and have the potential to start a training, should come forward to NSDC for the funding. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jayakant. That was quite good. And now I'll request Mr. Sachin Sandeep. He's a manufacturer and country head of RICS South Asia. Can you give your views?
Firstly, I'm going to take the opportunity just to kind of talk a little bit about the RICS, because, obviously in the context of the fact that we're a global professional body providing qualifications and standards in real estate and construction. So really, we are trying to focus on creating qualified, chartered, skilled manpower in the country. So really, that really is what we are trying to do. That being the mandate, the other second thing that we do is really advanced standards in real estate and construction. So one of the key mandates for us across the world, and we've got close to 170,000 members in more than 146 countries. I think the mandate for us is to try and institutionalize standards and best practices. So, we're trying to bring in international best practices in, different areas, but these are focused more on the profession. So whether it's valuations, whether it's construction, whether it's project management, whether it's estimation, facilities management, brokerage, we're trying to introduce some of these standards and best practices. The other part of what we are trying to do clearly, and is really try and create more education and training. While we are an accrediting body, we're pretty much, a similar, what chartered accountants are to the world of accounting, we're somewhat similar to the world of real estate and construction. And what we realized, one of the key challenges of doing business in India is that one, of course, we're aspiring to have more qualified chartered professionals. But one of the key things that we found was that there was a huge skills gap at the bachelor's and master's level. So we talked about, Jayakant has talked about, and quite a few people have focused on the workers. But we realized that there was a huge skills gap even at the, in terms of bachelor's and master's education for professions. And now, unless we've got enough skilled manpower, focused on that, clearly, the aspiration to create trainers, master trainers, which are required to actually facilitate the large quantum of workers that need to be trained, will become challenging. So really, just some quick insights into the findings of the research just on core professionals that that RICS had commissioned a little while back. Just in terms of specific numbers, we have close to 50 million people working in the sector. And of that 50 million, it's only 1.2% are core professionals. Now, core professionals currently are defined as architects, planners, and civil engineers. And, interestingly, one of the observations is that if we are aspiring to grow at about 8 to 9%, and really infrastructure is going to be a key part of our endeavor to meet our 8-9% growth projections, clearly, the amount of supply of core professionals will need to increase. Just highlighting some of the key shortages. We looked at the total supply we've got about 5,400 towns in the country, I may be wrong, but we have close to 616 planners that we produce from, that is the annual supply that is coming out from across the country from academia. In terms of civil engineers, we've got close to 600,000 civil engineers as on date. I think, we looked at projections over a 10-year period, and the estimate was that we need to build approximately about 8.7 billion square feet of real estate space across real estate construction and infrastructure. And if that being the case, like I say, even if I was to discount it by a factor of 10 to 15, assuming that all that has to be built does not get built, I think the challenge is going to be that, that for that 8.7 billion square feet, the current supply of core professionals should be about 2 to 2.5 million professionals a year. And that includes planners, that includes civil engineers, that includes architects, and that includes specialized professions like quantity surveyors, facilities managers, cost managers. These are very specialized professions that exist in different parts of the world, but we don't really have any education and training currently focused on this. Given this background, we realize that, while we are an accrediting body, we accredit also the universities across. So close to 500 universities are accredited, and they teach the curriculum that the RICS provides. But we realize that it's because the feeder is missing in terms of people coming into the sector. There are people like us who pretty much learned on the job, not necessarily the best way. And I think the challenge is going to be that this core professionals group also will need to be increased fairly significantly. And we realize that we can't just accredit universities. We're obviously trying to get more universities to set up more courses, but we decided that we will become a player in providing education and training ourselves. So we launched a lot of specialized education programs. We are contemplating setting up a center of excellence, within this financial year. But clearly, the challenges exist both on the worker side and on the professional side. And just to kind of, quantify, some of the great work that Jaykant and, all the members of the working group are doing on setting up the Sector Skills Council. If I was to quantify the requirement, I mean, we're aspiring to have 25 lakh people trained every year from year 3. Going down the plan period of about, which is the next 10 years. And to do 25 lakhs, we're looking at about 200 training institutions providing manpower of about 15,000 professionals at least, workers at least. And that's really on the worker side. On the professional side, we estimate that close to about, I've talked about the numbers. I think there's a requirement for setting up a number of people getting into skilling of professionals as well. And I guess, I look at as much as the focus on workers and skilling the unskilled into semi-skilled and then moving them up to skilled, I think there's an equal emphasis required on skilling of professions as well. And so kudos to the NSDC team and the working group, which has been doing some great work in building support for the industry. We are also an industry body. We're growing, fairly significantly in India in terms of the qualified professionals. So we will try and continue to spread the message to our members. But I guess more and more people need to come in and obviously provide feedback on what's being done so that this is actually a truly representative, inclusive Sector Skills Council.
Thank you, Sachin. Would now request Mr. M.B. Satish, the Executive Vice President of Construction of L&T.
Hello, good evening. I think I will address these issues in actually two things. One is, most of you are developers. I think we also need to do something from the developer side to increase the productivity. See, many of us go for actually, these individual footings. It leads to more manpower. We need to do backfilling and all. Typically abroad, what we do is we backfill the soil, provide a full raft. Okay, so that the reliance on manpower is reduced. In India, we don't do that. We go everything which is very cheap, as you were saying, Salpa adjust madi in Canada. So everything we go for cheap things, where we want to cut costs. So that is one of the things that some of the or most of the developers can help us doing that. Second, the biggest problem today facing, we are doing around in residential itself about 250 towers all over India we are doing. And the biggest problem is talent. Talent in terms of, the staff. Okay, the staff we are overcoming by taking, the DETs and GETs. See, the buildings and factories I see alone in L&T, we take around 700 graduates. Around 450 DETs we take, balance all graduate engineer trainees. So these people we train them over a period of 1 year, and then they are put into construction. And some of the planning that we do, actually this year we took the whole NICMAR Hyderabad for there, they were doing planning. There were about 170 guys, and all of them L&T took over. Okay, that is the kind of shortage which is facing in this country. So we are trying to overcome, but still there is a very, very big problem. Today we get so many jobs. Everybody says, I have some of my actually clients here. They say, where are those guys, the old L&T guys? You got about 50, 60 staff at site. Hardly 5 people with more than 5 to 10 years experience in L&T. So this is becoming very critical. The bandwidth is becoming a problem. And second biggest problem is, my chairman says, we are doing a project for our own L&T in Hazira, and every time he used to say, no, not 3,000, we require 5,000 people. So then, okay, we used to mobilize 5,000 people. Then he used to say, you are bringing all people with 2 legs and 2 hands. They are workers. I think that is the status today. I mean, everything, people with 2 legs and 2 hands are being workers. In India, the most mechanized sector, do you know which one is that? It is it's the agriculture sector, because nobody is coming for agriculture. Agriculture is the most mechanized. And in construction, in L&T, we try to mechanize everything. I think we have the maximum number of tower cranes. We have the maximum number of batching plants with us. We have got concrete pumps. And, we introduced a thing called the steel service centers. This we got in, we have in Bangalore, we have in Chennai, all places where our work is going on. We have the steel service center. So like in abroad, the steel is cut, bent, and then sent to sites. Okay. So this is some of the ways that we are trying to come out. Regarding workmen, we have actually the CSTI, we call it actually, in the training centers for workmen, and we actually go to villages, bring these workmen, and then train. But we train more than about 8,000 workers per year. But the people who retain with us are hardly 5%. The problem is, these people, when we train them, we give them very good accommodation, things like that. But in India, we cannot have departmental workmen and do the work. If you have departmental workmen and do the work, next day you have a union, and none of us can do any work. So what do? We tell them, okay, at least go and work with some of our subcontractors. If not possible, there are about 100 people. You say, okay, choose one of your own guys as a contractor, and then we'll make. We'll make payments and all. So that's what we are doing, but still it's a big, big problem actually. So we are trying to mechanize everything, and we have actually introduced also the precast, and we have set up a precast factory in Khopoli in Maharashtra, and we are actually producing hollow core slabs there. Also in Mumbai, we are producing actually for the SRA. We are doing precast, totally precast housing we are doing. And what we require to do is 5 houses per day. At present, we are doing around 3.5. But the problem is actually logistics. We don't have space to do the precasting. Actually, we took over one of the factories of this Richardson and Crudas, and we have set up a factory there. But the area is small, so we are actually bringing it from almost about 80 kilometers. We are bringing all precast panels. It's a lot of cost. And ultimately, in India again, we do everything. Ultimately, the customer says, no, this is the cost. So many rupees per square feet. Beyond that, he is not willing to pay. So this is a big, big problem. And we also have, the government has complicated with NREGA and all the things. Each guy in rural guy is getting about 100 days employment. So why should they come and work at sites? And most of the others would like to work in other, you've got so many retail malls everywhere where you're all in, it's called ACPC, we call it. You want to work in a AC with AC and in a PC atmosphere. So ACPC is actually killing the whole thing. So even getting engineers is very difficult actually. Nobody would like to come. Actually now only because the IT is There is slight slowdown. People are trying to become again engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers and all. Other everybody would have become an IT engineer. All civil engineers, the best brains, are all in IT. Today we take GETs not from the tier 1 cities and all, mostly from tier 2 cities and all. We take. So this is the problem we have, but we need to overcome that mostly by mechanization. That's what we are saying. I think that's the only solution, and of course training. And today we have set up actually our training institute in places like Bihar, UP and all that. Today all construction is going on only because we used to blame Bimaru. It is only because of Bimaru that we are all constructing today. Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, UP, these are the 4 places from where you get all the workmen. Today you go to see even actually Tamil Nadu, when the assembly was opened, next day Mr. Karunanidhi threw a party for all the workmen and Hindi songs were played in the assembly. This is something surprise because all these workmen are all from North India. Same thing in Kerala. We are doing all the work. All the workers are North Indians and they are the happiest because every contractor has to pay them double overtime. All these fellows are going with their families and settling down in Kerala. But if tomorrow, if Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, UP and all improve, then I think we'll have much more tougher problem on our hands. Okay? And the other things we'll answer with the panel. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Satish.
We've got to look at the whole skill requirements for the whole construction sector in general and real estate sector in particular. We are talking of not only the building construction aspect, but also the infrastructure development component. Both put together is all development there. And for that, what skills are needed? I think Sindhu has rightly brought out at the top level of the things of all the professionals required, the architects, the planners, the complete professional background, 2 to 3% of the total requirement in this big pyramid that you have, triangles, the overall triangle pyramidal shape that we have, 2 to 3% for all these professionals. But even there, I feel there's a big problem of roughly 700 engineering colleges bringing about 3,500 civil engineers every year, and 117 architecture schools bringing about roughly about 5,000 architects every year. This big number of 35,000 engineers and about 5,000 architects. The right level of skill sets required for actual project implementation itself, actual hands-on training. Quite often itself, only when they come out of the engineering college, they start learning construction because they never touch brick or sand or cement or steel. So actual construction orientation is not there. So that's also another aspect. Even among the colleges, you have to really bring in the type of, like the house agency that you have for doctors or articleship for chartered accountancy, actual work orientation, apprenticeship before the degree is given. Number one aspect. The second major component is the mid-level of component which is coming off. The total number of people is the supervisory level and the foreman level. For example, if the universities, the colleges and polytechnics are taking care of the doctorates, the degrees and the diplomas, if that takes care of the top about 10% component, the next bottom component 90% will cover of all your supervisors and foremen who could be coming either from the ITIs to some extent or many years of experience to a large extent, and that's also an important component of the workforce which requires to be trained in a large way. That brings a large base of the pyramid, which are the large amount of the construction worker, the masons, the carpenter, the bartender, the plumber, the electrician, the glass fixer, the tile, the painter, etc., etc. Roughly about 30 major construction trades are there, which requires to be looked after. And where do we get these people, as he rightly brought out, not only for most of the other states over there, but more importantly comes unskilled, becomes semi-skilled, and skilled on a large learning curve with all your projects, because there was no training center, because they are either illiterate or semi-literate up to 4th standard or 5th standard. They can't even get into an ITI. In any case, if you have gone through an ITI, they will never take a travel and do the work. So in any case, you've got to really catch up the level of the 4th or 5th standard and get into this particular training for vocational training into a larger. We don't have that particular institutional set up to impart training, excepting for some good initiatives Larsen & Toubro has done for their training centers, or some of the leading groups like Rustomji has done, or the TVS group has done. I had a good interaction today only with the team, especially MEP related work on complete issues related to all electrical, plumbing, firefighting, and all the other related component being done. One good initiative about which I'm glad we have the presence of Ms. Aruna Sundararajan here, Joint Secretary in the Ministry, who also knows HUDCO's work, where based on the ministry's intervention, somewhere in the 1988 to throughout of 90s, 1990 to 2000, roughly about 600 building centers, national network of building centers or Nirmiti Kendras or Nirman Kendras, or in Tamil it's called Kattida Mayam, have been installed for imparting training for large number of construction workers on large number of the building trades which I just indicated, including specially required for disaster mitigation on earthquake-related construction, cyclone-resistant construction, or other related things, including cost-effective housing technology, etc. They had about 600 at one point of time. At least 150 are still working over there. Use that particular network, also strengthen that network. Since Madam is here, now there are major movements for housing. Rajiv Awas Yojana is being taken up all over slum housing. Strengthen that network wherever it is there and expand it wherever it's not there is also another aspect. So what is importantly required is a training center of this nature, whether it's going to be done either by any one of the institutional mechanisms or by construction companies, or the big invitation that Jaykant has given to anybody who want to come forward for setting up the training institutional setup over there. I mean, it costs money. I'll come back on the money in a minute. Over there, they require the right level of skill standards. What is that I should expect from a mason or a carpenter or a barbender or a plumber or an electrician? You got to write down the skill standards expected out of that particular one, and based on the skill standards required, we have written that for about 65. 30 of them for actual construction related trades, and 35 of them for using all mechanized manner of work, whether you want a JCB or a road roller, or you want a tower crane or a patching plant or a crusher plant. So they're all equipments and machineries and plans and tools which also requires operation. It's not a driving license that's required. You've got to really operate that and do that. So these particular trades, once they're there, then you should be able to get the right level of syllabus for that. What are the things to be taught, the training materials required, the training center required, the trainers required to impart this particular training. It's not going to chalk and talk, not PowerPoint. It's going to be hands-on training, how to do that particularly, how not to do the work. The training material also has got to be done. Some good initiatives being done. Now that NSDC has come over there with some amount of money, we should be able to see how this can be expanded into a very large way. There has got to be motivation in this. Unfortunately, for the construction workforce in India, unlike all developing countries, none of the contracts, civil engineering contracts, construction contract, building or infrastructure has one line written that you shall use trained construction workforce. Whereas you go to Singapore, you go to Malaysia, you go to Australia, if you do not use trained certified construction workers, you shall pay 1% levy of the total contract value. The contractor has to keep that money, and that 1% money that you keep in a contract value will be used for fast-track training for all the workers coming on the site. We don't have in a contract. So you require, while the demand side has to come of insisting on contract documents to insist upon trained, certified workers to be utilized. That's the point which Shekhar said, it's not 100%, at least 10% now, 20% now, after a few years, 30% lying in. So it's a good start. I'm glad you said that. You can't straight away say all 100% should be trained. So please introduce a particular issue on that into a very large way. I thought that's a very major comment. I just thought we will indicate here the National Building Code, which talks of architects, engineers, planners, urban designers, landscape architects, surveyors, etc., is also going to bring in the latest version skilled workers, what shall be the minimum qualification. So that's also going to come. I just thought we'll indicate as an information to everybody around. So that's also a requirement of what shall be the skill standards required in that. Now, how are we going to fund this particular thing? Major problem is money for training. While for supervisors, architects, engineers, they pay their money to come and get training. If you want a workers, take it from me, ladies and gentlemen, unless you pay sustenance allowance during training program. Because if he does not come here, he will get a 1 day's wage outside. So you should be able to give at least 100 to 150 or 200 rupees as a stipend for his food, for him to come from a village and stay over there. So you should keep for 2 to 3 months time period some sustenance. If not the trainer's cost, training material cost, training infrastructure cost, if somebody can put, at least the trainee's cost of money should come. Now that Madam is there, you thought of Narega. If you can get money from Rural Employment Guarantee Program, Urban Poverty Alleviation Program, try some training of rural youth for self-employment. You're aware of try some program. Some of this money also can be put together and made available, not to give just only for road laying or whatever. Use that for skill upgradation training. It will be a very major comment. Maybe NSDC money also can be utilized into a very large way. Another major component is these type of things that you do during the initial training, you should later on get the apprenticeship of actual workforce, in which case, whatever wages that you get in actual construction can be partly given, so that need not come as a stipend. You know what I'm trying to say? Because you already got the training, you're going to put them on actual apprenticeship working over there. So 2 to 3 months of training in a training center, 5 months, 6 months of actual apprenticeship on actual job doing. So the job itself will give you the type of wages required. That's the model we are trying to put for our skill training institute. And the next major component is you have to do pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction, that is operation and maintenance, keeping the thing going on there. So you have a skill set not only for actual construction, as you rightly brought out, Ranganath, you require also about how to have assets and facility management, how to run your water treatment plant, your sewage treatment plant, your lifts running, your machinery running, your electrical system running, your housekeeping related things. So you require skill sets, therefore, also for large number of skills for keeping things going over there in your building, existing building. So it's a combination of all these things put together if you take at that. So therefore, right from the top, bottom of the pyramid, top of the pyramid for the professionals, the intermediate supervisory group, and the large number of workforce group, you require a total package because the topic is for covering all the things, a strategy to cover all of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Pyramid to the bottom of the pyramid, as Suresh put it. There's one question to Jaykant, and perhaps to you also, because you're a part of the NSDC. How do you scale up? Because the numbers that are being spoken of, even by Sachin, are astronomical. And considering the fact that over the last 50 years, our system has, you know our system, how in the next 1 or 2 years would we shift gears all the way up to the top gear and scale up to get these numbers?
The answer is very simple. See, scaling up is not to be done by NSDC. NSDC is only a facilitator. We will do it because the effort is for the industry, by the industry, with the industry. So in fact, when I spoke, I did request the industry people to come forward. See, today we say there are 4 crore people. When it comes to skilling, it becomes a challenge. Are we not engaging 4 crore people? Can 10%, 50% of the industry start training programs? If there is a fund crunch, we are here to provide an interim support. So that's how we see 30% of your entire project cost is only labor. And that is the component which is within your control, where you asked about clutch. The clutch is the labor, the quality, the quality of product, what you get, it depends on the quality of people you engage, the quality of material we use. So there is very much, a lot of control on the quality of people you engage to get best out of it. So I feel that the industry has to come forward to start training in their own premise, in different geographies of the country, and we are here ready to support each of them. The Sector Skill Council is coming up. I would like, and the first thing that I wanted to share, that how many of you would support us in doing an assessment and certification of prior learning skills? We have got 4 crore people. Can each industry association come out with a list of people available in various geographies and say, this is the geography, can you do an assessment and certification? We will have a camp through our Sector Skill Council who will do a bridge course. If there is a gap assess, 2 days, 3 days, 7 days, various programs we can have, and we can do a prior learning skill assessment and certification. So that could be another way of triggering the thing. But definitely to scale up, it won't be done alone. Anyone, whether industry, L&T sets up 14 centers, whether Mr. Suresh sets up 60 centers, it has to be a collective effort by each one of you. Each one of us has to come forward to have a solution of our own. But if there is a financial problem required, we are here to support you on that.
Yeah. Jaykant, one of the things that perhaps NSDC should set is have a few models which the industry can use. There have been a lot of talk, and I'll open that up to any of you from the industry. There's one experiment that has gone on in some states and it's going on now, the Earn While You Learn program, where you...
So I'll just answer. I thought Mr. Reddy would answer because
let him do it.
CREDAI being on our board and being a stakeholder to NSDC, we first wanted to do a pilot because there was huge resistance in the industry that this sector is most unorganized, it's more unsustainable. We can't have a sustainable model, it can't have a scalable model. we tried to test it in Pune through CREDAI Pune. It started with one center, and now we have got a, developers lining up to start training of on-site training of their workers, and 22 developers have already got a training organized at the center. It's a 2-month training program. I attended few of them after completion, and the workers could say that their income has moved up. How? Because if they were doing X square feet of painting before being trained, after being trained, they could do X plus Y square feet of painting. So that's how the developer was happy, because the quality, the wastage, the time, it all got reduced, which ultimately led to a cost reduction in his, and that ultimately led to a profit. So on-site, on-job training, wherein developers have come forward, that's another model which we have already experienced, and I think Mr. Reddy will support that it has worked really well. Thank you.
Yeah.
The CREDAI Pune is doing well, but Jayakant has missed one point there. It is purely on grants, but NSDC in a later stage they have changed the policy. No grants will be given. It is on business model. But again, I am after the board that it has to be grants. The worker at least see again below the supervisor level it has to be in grants, free training, and at the same time stipend should be given. So, but here just alone using NSDC funds. The madam is here. The HUPA got also funds, and rural Ministry of Rural Development has funds, and Ministry of Labor has funds. So, with the help of the Housing Ministry, if we can channelize all their funds and pass on to the NSDC or the through the SSCs of the respective states, so they can also take up the. I think it has to be free training. Otherwise, nobody will come. That is one part. The second also we are trying. The Andhra Pradesh also we tried in some places in CREDAI Kurnool. We have trained about 1,000 people there. It's the what you call the involvement of all the stakeholders, the manufacturers, local consultants, and the trainers from the National Academy of Construction, Hyderabad. And the manufacturers also brought in their own trainers, their own technical people, their tools, their what you call mobilize.
Are you giving them a certificate after this?
Yes, we are giving. We are giving a certificate. So the collaboration with all the stakeholders also is working well. And the morning 7 to 10 we do the classroom training. That is at our chapter level, and the refreshment is provided by the developer or the chapter free of cost. And half-day wage is given by the extra half-day wage is given by the concerned developer to their workers, because if it's a big project, we are doing stand-alone for that project, or in a small sites we are mobilizing all the people at our CREDAI chapter office. We are taking care of them. So this involvement, it's a self-funding, self-financing the scheme. This is nowhere related to NSDC, but there can be different models. Yeah, I think Sachin is there. I think he knows what is going on across the globe. We can source different models, and NSDC can encourage different models also. But we are giving the certificate. Pune is giving certificate, and when NAC also giving certificate, and when we are doing also we are giving certificates.
There's one suggestion we have had on this issue with the government to see if we can introduce some of these vocational training courses, like what Suresh said about hands-on, right at the school level. This is something that needs to be done so that they are almost employable when they come out. And the other alternate suggestion for this, where people are getting employed, one of the things that we said, could they, with this certificate, also mainstream themselves at some point of time, which means it gives them an impetus to sort of really get into this and not get into the university initially, and they have a chance to get to the university if they want after earning for a few years.
Specific to the industry.
Yeah.
One more point, madam. Our money, huge money is lying with the labor departments in the respective states. That is our contribution. 1% labor cess we are giving. I think the Prime Minister office also knows this, that we can make some amendment, because they are not using that money for the skill development. They are using for different purposes. If the part of the money comes to skill development, we can comfortably meet the entire requirement. We can give all the facilities. Even that money can be used for the buying the tools for them, uniform and everything. We can take care of them. So that part I think housing ministry also will take care of.
I wanted to add on one more dimension. With all that particular training at the job training, you're talking of a captive worker which is already at site. That means the worker has already come in a building site, a road construction site, or a builder's construction site, etc., etc. So that number incidentally is of the order of around 35 million or 3.5 crores. This 5 million is the additional required for the new construction component company. So therefore, one is to take care of the existing construction workforce at site who might be unskilled or semi-skilled. How do you get them into unskilled to semi-skilled or semi-skilled to skill at the site is one, where site itself is used as your training area, where you are using a little classroom, maybe one of the rooms there, and also do it at the project site. To that extent, productivity of work for those people during that, if they want to complete the walling over there, plastering over there, obviously it will get affected. So it cannot be a virtual site, but at the same time, it's got to physically do that. Simultaneously, as you rightly said, you got to think in terms of large number of uninitiated, young, unemployed, school drops out, men and women who are 5th standard or 6th standard, get them onto the construction as a skill. If you're doing anything else, you're going to get 300 rupees, 400 rupees, 500 rupees wages, which you can't get even if the degree, whatever it may be, I'm talking about. So get them into, use the existing schools, maybe in the evenings or the schools when classrooms are over, use that as a training if you don't have infrastructure, money to be spent across. But as long as some little funding is available for such initiatives who are not construction workers, but over a period of time, these trained people can be given as a feeder for the construction projects, or they should be able to take that. Only thing is, for high-level things, namely welding practices, or fitters, plumbers, higher order skills, large number of bigger construction companies, including international companies for abroad posting, they are ready to give a money. So a placement fee. So that placement fee money is a good source which can be used for training. Most of the training that I am hearing of any training center are always done for training, certifying and sending across for Middle East, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Muscat, etc., because for each one of the construction worker or mason carpenter, somebody pays some amount of, that means somebody is ready to pay the money for that, and that money is paid to the training center. So the source for the training comes out of that. But what I am trying to say is a large number of, while those models will continue to prosper, we should encourage that. I'm talking about the large number of 80 to 70% of the construction workers. If you have to really get the thing at the trainee level, who is going to get into the training, you have to really give the sustenance cost for 1 to 2, not much, 100 rupees per day or 3,000 rupees per month for about 2 months time period. 6,000 per trainee is a good amount of money. If that money can be made available, other institutions can take care of training infrastructure, trainers cost, training material cost, etc., can be done. And it's a good suggestion which Reddy has given. If 1% of all the construction is taken by the Ministry of Labor by each state, and that is available of the order of 18,000 crores or 20,000 crores, and if each state is utilizing for some other component, some bonus to be given or some welfare fund to be given, use a percentage, at least 5%, 10% towards skill upgradation training. That can be a good recommendation that can go out of this particular conference. Plus, of course, money, as I suggested, NREGA money, urban poverty alleviation money, or skill development money, Ministry of Labor money, pull it together as a major source that can come, which can be utilized for giving training. The biggest problem, if you have enough money available, you can have any amount of training done. That's an important. You asked the cost when I said who it costs. It costs. You should also have an answer who. There's no free lunch. So you got to find out how are you going to take care of that particular lunch for that particular worker on that day.
Yes,
yeah, I only differ. Actually, LNT, we have the following trainings. Actually, we do in, we got CSTI, we got in 8 places in India. And, we also offer them a stipend of 2,500 rupees per month, plus food, plus accommodation during this period. We also, but still, as I told you, it's not more than 5% that the workers are being retained with us. We also have site-based training in our own LNT sites, 3 to 6 days. We have all our sites, we do the training just to increase our productivity so that the workmen become more skilled. And we have extended training on job sites, 6 months at sites we also have. Then we have tie-ups actually for placements at LNT sites. And we also, what we do is, internally, the guys who are actually being trained at our CSTI, we actually, for each worker, we actually subsidize the site 5,000 rupees a month. Means it is given from, the center.
So that's what it is. That money is for the company, no?
The company, so it comes to our own side because our site says, sir, this fellow's productivity is very less. So that is why to increase that, we subsidize them and say, okay, you take. But one of the good things which is happening here is like, in Kerala, if you go, we engage actually all these trained workmen in one block. And, initially the productivity was very less, but now it is improved. But people are saying, let us engage all these workers after, 10 standard and all, they are not going to come. Most of the guys who are there are all unskilled. For that to make, we need to make our buildings more mechanized. We still do all block works and all. See, abroad, nobody does block work actually. It's all, dry cladding, it is done. Gypsum board.
Sachin's only issue is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, all these put together, best of L&T training, Hindustan Construction, all the biggest construction company, TVS training, all put together will not add up, including building centers, will not add up more than 1 lakh per year. We are talking about of the order of 1 million, and of the order of you want to do it up to 40 million construction. If you want to scaling it, that's where I agree with Sachin. If you want to scale it up and take the big numbers over there, business as usual will not be enough. You require to have interventions of a much larger nature for that.
One question to Sachin. Sachin, you spoke about working with universities. Is there any way of working not necessarily only with the university, but also with the ITIs and with the corporates like these who have facilities, so you can sort of link up these facilities? And would the corporates, after Sachin says, would the corporates be open to getting people from outside to come and train at your place or like a finishing school, and also use, there are quite a few universities and engineering colleges which have all the equipment, but they don't use it.
Right.
Is there any way of tying it up? Organizations like yours can work along, and NSDC can work along to have a network. So you leverage on all the assets that are already there, because it's very difficult to create assets for that kind of scaling up.
I think eventually that may be the model that one would require to work on, because really, the ability to leverage existing infrastructure would be fairly critical. I think what can be done is clearly then, brings back, I think once there is that level of standardization and some element of competency frameworks and national occupational standards that have been developed, and that consistency has been brought about in terms of trades, then in terms of dissemination, making sure that there is the upgradation of skills, the curriculum, and whatever is being taught through the ITIs and ITCs, and leveraging the existing infrastructure would really be the only way that you're going to actually, and in addition to the funding that could be made available from NSDC or some of the others, is that really the only way you're going to do the kind of scale that you're talking about? I mean,
we'll take questions from the audience, but I think we'll take a few questions. We'll try to finish in the next 10 minutes.